At 3:07 p.m., Director Tom Aldridge's desk phone shattered the afternoon quiet.
I'm sorry, but Rebecca Vance is not well. She's been having episodes at home. She shouldn't be given more responsibility.
Tom's hand froze over the promotion file. He had never expected a call like this. 2 days before the VP announcement, Rebecca Vance was the firm's top internal candidate. Across the building, Rebecca reviewed the Q3 figures with quiet satisfaction. The promotion felt imminent. Her office phone buzzed. Tom's voice was flat. "Rebecca, can you come to my office?" She entered Tom's office. The promotion file was open on his desk, but the pen was still uncapped.
There's been a complaint about your mental fitness. I'm pausing the promotion pending a review.
Her mind went blank. A complaint? Mental fitness? This had to be a mistake.
Alone in her office, the nameplate on the door seemed to mock her now. Linda Walsh ended her call as Rebecca stormed into HR. She gestured to a chair without smiling.
What exactly did they say about me? And who was it?
The caller claimed you're experiencing episodes, that you're not mentally fit for the VP role. It was detailed.
That's a lie. I've never had a psychiatric episode. Someone is sabotaging me.
I believe you, but protocol requires an investigation. I can't clear you without it.
At least give me a name. I can't fight a phantom.
The source is confidential during an active case. I can't bend that rule, not even for you.
This wasn't a colleague. This was someone who knew exactly where to wound.
Linda stood, ending the meeting. Rebecca rose, her questions unanswered, the silence heavier than the accusation. Back at her desk, the nameplate felt like a taunt. She had no defense against a call she couldn't hear. She left her desk and walked back to HR, her heels clicking with forced resolve. Linda looked up as she entered.
I need to request the phone logs for the company line that received the call. That's the only way to trace it.
I'll put in the request. It may take a day to pull the logs from our telecom provider.
That evening, in her apartment, Rebecca couldn't sit still. The room felt smaller than it had that morning.
Who would use words like episodes? Who knew enough about her life to make it sound plausible?
She scrolled through every recent work exchange, searching for hidden resentment in polite emails.
You think that corporate title will make you special? Don't get too big for your boots, Rebecca.
No. Even she wouldn't go this far. But the thought stuck like a thorn.
The next morning, Linda called with an update. Her voice was deliberately neutral.
We've received the phone records. We'll need a few hours to analyze them. Sit tight.
Sit tight, as if her entire career wasn't hanging by a thread, with an invisible enemy pulling the string.
Late that afternoon, Linda called her into the HR office and shut the door. The analysis was finished. She slid a printout across the desk. One entry was highlighted in fluorescent yellow. Sharon Vance, 3:07 p.m., 6 minutes. The number was identical to the one in Rebecca's cell phone.
Her mother. The same voice that had spent years mocking her career had dialed Tom Aldridge.
Rebecca, can you confirm if you know this caller? The registration says Sharon Vance.
She's my mother.
Linda's pen hovered as the implications sank in. This was no ordinary workplace complaint.
It wasn't a backstabbing rival. It was the person who should have protected her the most.
The investigation had turned radioactive. Nothing in HR training prepared for this. She stared without blinking, the name on the log a confession she never thought she'd hear. She drove home on autopilot, the city lights a smear. The printout lay crumpled on the passenger seat.
Every dismissive comment, every dig, suddenly realigned in her memory. They weren't just criticism, they were strategy.
Vice President? You, Rebecca? Don't make me laugh. That's a job for serious people. Why can't you be more like your sister? She knows her place. She doesn't try to outgrow herself.
A photo from Rebecca's desk, mother and daughter years ago, the little girl's smile already guarded. Every milestone Rebecca had built, graduation, first job, promotion, her mother had belittled. It was a pattern that only now looked like a plan.
This wasn't a momentary lapse. This was the final move in a long campaign to keep her small.
She never needed to fly so high. People get hurt when they fly too high.
Sharon Vance had decided her daughter's success was a threat to be managed. The call to Tom was just the most public move.
And now, she'd tried to take away the one thing Rebecca had built entirely on her own: her career, her independence.
At 9:48 p.m., she pressed the call button. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered.
Rebecca? It's late. Is everything all right?
Don't play that game. I know you called Tom Aldridge. You told him I was having psychiatric episodes.
I only said what I thought was best. That promotion would have destroyed you. You'll thank me someday.
Thank you? You lied to my employer. You made me sound unstable. That was a calculated attack, not concern.
You were always too big for your boots, Rebecca. This was just the first time someone told you no.
You've spent years trying to keep me small, but this crossed every line. I am done with you.
She ended the call before her mother could respond. The silence in the apartment was suffocating.
She had never heard her mother sound so honest. It was the most painful thing of all.
But beneath the grief, a cold resolve was forming. She would not let this injustice stand. The next morning, she called her primary care physician, then her therapist. Both agreed to help immediately. Her doctor's letter was 2 paragraphs that dismantled a lie. No history of psychiatric disorder, ever. The therapist's note was even stronger. Rebecca Vance has demonstrated exceptional emotional resilience. She held the envelopes in her hands like evidence for a trial that had already begun in her mind.
This was the opposite of her mother's voice. Cold, professional, and unmistakably true.
No episodes. No instability. The only dysfunction was the one that had dialed Tom's extension.
She imagined her mother's face if she saw these. The thought almost made her smile. Almost.
She called Linda Walsh and requested a meeting. I have the documentation you need. The paper trail was now heavier than the accusation. She was no longer a defendant. She was the prosecutor.
For the first time in days, she could breathe without feeling the weight of a phantom diagnosis on her chest.
Rebecca entered HR and placed the 2 envelopes on Linda's desk without a word.
This is unequivocal. No history of any psychiatric condition, ever.
She picked up the phone and dialed Tom Aldridge before Rebecca could exhale. Minutes later, Tom entered. The promotion file from that terrible afternoon was back in his hand.
Rebecca, the promotion is reinstated with full back pay, and I owe you an apology.
The words settled over her like a reprieve, not a victory. The war wasn't fought in this room.
The case file received its final stamp, unfounded, closed. Back at her desk, she circled the VP transition date on her calendar, but her hand trembled. She had cleared her name, but the person who smeared it was still breathing the same air.
She had won the company's trust back, but she still had to decide what justice looked like.
The week after her reinstatement, the office air had changed. Smiles came with a blink of hesitation. She heard it first from the break room, a voice she couldn't place. Even if she's cleared, her own mother didn't trust her mind. That doesn't go away.
The words landed like a second sentence, not from the company, but from everyone else.
She retreated to her office and locked the door, her own nameplate feeling like a target. The HR folder was stamped closed, but the lawsuit in her mind had only just opened.
Her mother had tried to take her career. The only response that made sense was to take something back.
She typed 4 words into the search bar: tortious interference employment attorney. The screen filled with results, and for the first time in days, the knot in her chest loosened.
This wasn't revenge. It was the cost of doing damage.
3 days later, Rebecca walked into Elena Marquez's office, a mahogany desk between them.
Tortious interference is exactly what this is. Your mother interfered with your employment contract.
But she's my mother. Suing her feels like crossing a line I can't come back from.
She didn't act like a mother when she called your boss. You're allowed to hold her accountable, Rebecca.
Elena's voice was not unkind, but it carried the weight of someone who had seen too many boundaries crossed.
She was asking Rebecca to do the one thing she'd avoided for years, treat her mother like a stranger.
The evidence is overwhelming. Phone records, medical letters, and the confession she'll make under pressure.
Rebecca took the pen. The retainer agreement was 5 pages of dense legalese. She signed the last page. The pen scratched once, and the lawsuit was set in motion.
It felt like signing a declaration of independence, one that would cost her the last scraps of a relationship she never really had.
Elena drafted the demand letter that same week. She showed Rebecca the final page, $14,000 in lost compensation and legal fees, itemized like an invoice for betrayal. It was mailed certified with return receipt. The paper trail was now a legal weapon, aimed directly at the woman who'd tried to cripple her career. 7 days later, the letter arrived at Sharon's door. She tore the envelope like it was an insult, her hands shaking.
Tortious interference. Damages. Her daughter's signature. The words blurred, but the meaning was sharp as a blade.
Her phone call came within the hour. Rebecca's screen lit up with a name she'd almost blocked, and she answered with a rehearsed calm.
How could you do this to me? After everything I sacrificed for you, you're suing your own mother?
All communication must go through my attorney. I will not discuss this with you. Goodbye, Sharon.
Sharon screamed something unintelligible, and then the line went dead. Rebecca set the phone down, her hands steady but her heart hammering. Later that night, Sharon left a voicemail, 3 minutes of sobbing and recrimination. Rebecca deleted it without listening and sat in the dark. The pressure of suing her own mother pressed against every breath. 2 weeks passed. Then a thick envelope arrived, no return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Inside were 5 pages of swirled cursive, the ink dark and pressed hard into the paper. I only wanted to protect you, but I see now that I overstepped. I've been under such stress, the family store, but I shouldn't have called Tom. It was wrong.
Every line was a mirror, her mother's guilt refracted through self-pity. This wasn't an apology, it was a confession. She felt a hollow victory. The walls of her mother's denial had cracked, but the breach only made the whole edifice uglier.
She placed the pages on her desk later that day and called Elena. Her voice was flat.
She wrote a confession. 5 pages of it. I'm forwarding it now.
In Elena's office, the letter was scanned and filed as Exhibit A, the mother's own hand proving interference. The legal case grew teeth, even as the emotional wound festered. The rift between mother and daughter was now documented in ink. 3 days after the apology letter, Elena's number flashed on Rebecca's phone. Her voice was businesslike but carried satisfaction.
Her attorney came back with an offer. $9,800 for a full release.
By afternoon, they sat across from each other in the conference room, the settlement draft already printed.
It was never about the money. But maybe this is the only language she understands.
Take it and use it. This is your leverage now. Turn it into something she can't touch.
Rebecca pulled the pen from the holder and signed the settlement without hesitating. The ink dried quickly. The settlement figure was $9,800, less than the demand, but enough to crack a door open. A week later, a cashier's check arrived at her office, the pay line crisp and final. She held it for a long moment, the paper weight lighter than the act that produced it. The lawsuit was over. The question now was what to build with the ashes. That evening, Rebecca sat on her couch, the check still on the coffee table. A memory surfaced unbidden.
You'll never own anything of your own, Rebecca. You don't have the stomach for it.
The words had lodged under her skin for a decade. Now the check in her hand was the scalpel to remove them.
She picked up her phone and called a realtor. Her voice was steady. On Saturday, she stood outside a mid-rise condo building, its glass balconies catching the winter sun. Inside, the unit was unfurnished and bright. The realtor gestured toward the living room window.
She imagined a bookshelf there, a reading chair here, her name on a mailbox downstairs. Finally.
Back at the real estate office, the agent slid an offer letter across the desk. Rebecca read the terms only once. She signed with the same pen that had inked the settlement. The down payment was the exact amount of the check. The condo was no longer a possibility. It was a promise, a place her mother would never cross the threshold. The closing lasted 30 minutes. Rebecca walked out holding a key fob that felt heavier than the settlement check ever had. 3 days later, she carried the first box into the condo. The hallway smelled like fresh paint and new carpet. She unpacked kitchenware first, then paused over a small box of old notes and cards she hadn't touched in years. Inside was a birthday card from her mother, the handwriting now familiar from the apology letter. She read it once, then dropped it into the trash. She crossed to the mantel and placed a framed photograph of her foster parents, Mark and Laura Bennett, right in the center.
These were the people who believed in her without a single condition. This was the family she chose.
Stepping back, she let the silence settle. The condo was still mostly empty, but it was undeniably hers.
No one would ever use this address against her. No one would call her boss from this city and claim she was losing her mind.
She walked to the window and watched the skyline dim. The last piece of her old life, her mother's shadow, was locked outside. A package appeared on her doorstep a week later. The return address was written in the same tight cursive. Inside the box lay a folded quilt and pinned to it a note. "I made this for your new home. I am still your mother."
The words were so familiar, guilt wrapped in wool. She didn't unfold the quilt. She had no intention of letting it touch her floors.
She resealed the box with packing tape, then picked up a black Sharpie. The letters "Return to sender" bled into the cardboard. That afternoon, she drove to the post office and slid the package across the counter without a word. The clerk scanned the label without comment. Rebecca watched the box disappear into the mail chute.
She felt no sadness, only the cool satisfaction of someone who had finally learned to refuse poisoned gifts.
On her phone, she opened Sharon's contact and deleted it permanently. The option block had already been tapped weeks ago. As she drove back to the condo, the city skyline rose in her windshield like a confirmation of every choice she'd made. Her mother's final attempt had been returned. The condo remained a space no guilt could enter. Evening settled. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, the city a scatter of gold below.
You were right about one thing, Mom. I built something for myself.
The words weren't bitter. They were a deed stamped and filed.
She had turned a lawsuit into a key, a mother's gambit into a mortgage.
The condo held no echo of Sharon's voice. No room bore her fingerprint.
For the first time in her adult life, she owned a space that wasn't haunted by criticism.
She walked through each room, touching the walls like a final inventory. The settlement had become a sanctuary. The injury had healed into architecture.
She had outlasted the worst of her mother's attempts. The rest was just a square footage she'd never have to share.
Outside, the city hummed on, indifferent. Inside, Rebecca Vance had finally arrived. The following Friday, Rebecca's condo glowed with soft light and the clink of glasses. Tom Aldridge arrived with a bottle of wine, his first visit since the investigation. Linda Walsh followed, her laughter filling the room before she even crossed the threshold. Rebecca stood in the center, a host for the first time in her new home, and the role felt natural. Linda raised her glass, and the small crowd turned.
To Rebecca, who survived a sabotage no one saw coming and still came out on top.
Tom nodded, lifting his own glass with a rare, unguarded smile.
You earned this, Rebecca. Not just the title, but the respect that comes with it.
Rebecca's smile unspooled, the first genuine one in months. The room toasted, and for a moment, the past was just a story told in the clink of champagne flutes. Across town, Sharon sat on a cold park bench, the returned package resting on her knees like a sentence. The quilt she'd made with her own hands was still folded inside, untouched by anyone but her. She hadn't cried in weeks. The demand letter, the settlement, the final rejection had drained everything. A notification buzzed on her phone. Her Facebook post about forgiveness had one like from a cousin she'd never met. The screen dimmed. No one else cared. The small town that once gossiped had moved on. At the condo, morning light poured through floor-to-ceiling windows. Rebecca's coffee steamed by the sill. She didn't know what her mother was doing, and the peace of not wondering felt like a luxury. The distance between them now wasn't measured in miles, but in the choices each had made. For Sharon, the park bench would grow colder. For Rebecca, the windows would stay open and the city below hummed golden, as if inviting her to forget everything that came before. She walked slowly through the condo, her fingers trailing the wall as if memorizing every inch. At the mantel, she paused before the framed photograph of Mark and Laura Bennett, the family she chose.
I built something she can't take.
The words weren't angry. They were simply true, a deed stamped into every floorboard. Rebecca didn't just win a promotion. She bought a door her mother would never open. No key Sharon possessed could turn this lock. No apology could ring the handle. The condo number glowed softly under the hallway light, and inside, the space was entirely hers. She stood for a moment at the threshold, then closed the door gently behind her. The sound was soft, final, and complete. For Rebecca Vance, the door had closed on a lifetime of sabotage and opened on something entirely her own. Months later, on a quiet Saturday morning, Rebecca sat on her condo balcony with coffee. Her phone lit up with a local news alert she hadn't filtered. Vance Home Goods closes after decades, last store auctioned.
The name was a relic from another life. She almost scrolled past without stopping.
She read the article without emotion, then took a long sip of coffee. The store her mother once wielded as proof of family success was now just a liquidation notice. She swiped the alert away. It disappeared like a text from a blocked number. The store she grew up in was gone. So was the version of her that would have cared. Some losses can't be sued for. Others can't be repaired. She leaned back, the city golden below, and let the last thread of her mother's grip dissolve into the steam of her coffee. The final chapter closed not with a gavel, but with the soft click of a key in a lock. On a side table near the window, the returned package, the one she'd never opened, now held a small succulent, its label long forgotten. The bold return to sender letters were still faintly visible under the ceramic pot, but they no longer carried any weight. The gilt she'd mailed back had transformed into something simpler, a holder for new growth. And that's how a $9,800 settlement bought something a mother's apology never could: a life with no forwarding address. The city outside hummed its indifferent song, but the notes no longer reached her. She had built a fortress of silence, and inside it, she was finally free. The title of her story wasn't a question anymore. My mom told my coworkers I was mentally ill to sabotage my promotion. Then HR investigated her. The night settled in, and the condo held its peace.